Okay, if you were disappointed in the last video, I get it. This seems like just another book of the Bible and not exactly what I hyped it up to be. That's because you haven't gotten to chapter 6 yet. And now you're there. Beginning in chapter 6 we read, "And it came to pass, when the sons of men had increased, and in those days were born to them fair and beautiful daughters, the angels, sons of heaven, saw them and desired them. And they said to one another, Come, let us choose for ourselves wives from the children of men, and let us beget for ourselves children." Now this is clearly reflected in Genesis chapter 6, verses 1 and 2. "When mankind began to multiply on the face of the earth, and the daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that the daughters of humankind were beautiful, and they took for themselves wives from any they chose." The Book of Enoch clarifies this. Sons of God equals sons of heaven, which equals what we call angels. So continue on in Enoch. "And Semyaza, who was their leader, said to them, I fear that you may not wish for this deed to be done, and that I alone may pay for this great sin. And they all answered him and said, Let us all swear an oath, and bind one another with curses, so that we do not alter this plan, but to carry out this plan effectively." So Semyaza, the leader of the angels who fell, the one commonly confused with Satan throughout Christianity, he was afraid to take the fall for this without his buddies. We also see the motivation here. They wanted to marry and reproduce, which was not for angels to do. Continuing on, we read, "Then they all swore together, and all bound one another with curses to it. And they were in all 200 who came down on Ardis, which was the summit of Mount Hermon. And they called them Mount Hermon because they swore an oath and bound one another with curses." Now we get to see who all was there, by name. How many fallen angels were on the earth? So to anyone who is better at pronouncing these ancient words and ancient names, I'm sorry. If you have a phonetic pronunciation guide, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Here we go. "And these are the names of the leaders. Semyaza, who is the leader, Arukabel, Ramiel, Kokabel, Tamael, Ramiel, Danael, Ezekiel, Babrael, Azael, Aramos, Ananel, Zachiel, Samael, Santaniel, Toriel, Yomrael, and Azrael. These are the leaders of the 200 angels and of all the others with them." So there you go. There were 200 angels that fell, and these were the names of the leaders. I want to be clear, these are fallen angels, not demons. There's a big difference, and I'll be getting to that. Continuing on in Enoch. "And they took wives for themselves, and everyone chose one for himself. And they began to go into them, and were promiscuous with them. And they taught them charms and spells, and they showed them the cutting of roots and trees, and they became pregnant and bore large giants. And their height was 3,000 cubits." We see here that angels gave humans various kinds of knowledge, which we'll get into later. However, I am almost sure that this translation is an error or hyperbole. We can look to other parts of scripture, such as 2 Samuel 21:16, where we see a description of the size of one of these giants, which reads, "Now Isbai Benob was one of the Rapha. He had a spear that weighed 300 bronze shekels and was armed with a new weapon. And he said that he would kill David." So Isbi Benob held a 35 kilogram spear and some new weapon. Doing a quick bit of math, based on average sizes of spears of the day, this spear would have been around 5 times as wide and long as the average Israelites would carry. The average height of the ancient Jew was around 170 centimeters, roughly my height. So this Ishbi Benob was likely 850 centimeters, which is 28 feet tall. That is insanely large, around the height of the roof of a 2-story building, or up to a 3-story building with a flat roof, possibly. But not the 1.3 kilometers tall, which is just a bit taller than the Jeddah Tower in Saudi Arabia. Again, hyperbole was popular when this is written, so I tend to go with the 28 feet to 850 centimeter range and not the 1.3 kilometer range. Also, the size of these weapons would not make sense for it being that big. It'd be like you throwing a toothpick at a grasshopper. It wouldn't make sense. Although shooting a grasshopper wouldn't make sense either. They devoured the toil of men until they were unable to sustain them, and the giants turned against them in order to devour man. Is anyone else picturing Hopper from A Bug's Life? Anyway, continuing. And they began to sin against birds, against animals, and against reptiles, and against fish, and devoured one another's flesh. They drank the blood from it, and then the earth complained about the lawless ones. Sinning against animals does not mean to kill and eat or hunt for sport or anything like that, as that's all totally fine. The leading theory is hybridization of various species corrupting DNA, just like they did with humans to create a Nephilim. There could have been a Nephilim-like hybrid dealing with other animals other than human, or performing other sinful acts with animals. Continuing. And Azazel taught men to make swords, daggers, and shields and breastplates, and he showed them the things after these, the art of making them, bracelets, ornaments, and the art of making up the eyes and of beautifying the eyelids, and the most precious stones, and all kinds of colored dyes. And the world was changed, and there was great impiety and much fornication, and they went astray, and all their ways became corrupt. So this one angel taught us how to make dedicated weapons and increase lust. If you're familiar with the 4 F's theory of fighting, fleeing, feeding, and fornicating, this covers 2 of them right away, and there's a massive increase in fighting and fornicating. Keep in mind that the teaching us about precious stones is to generate wealth and greed, beautifying the eyelids and other forms of makeup that just increases lust, and then teaching us how to do metallurgy and sword making and daggers and stuff like that. Teaches you how to make weapons, and the teaching of shields gives you more confidence to go into battle to fight people. This just creates a terrible world. This is not of God, but of the fallen angels who rejected their place in heaven. Let's not forget that Genesis 6:5-7 shows us the following. But the Lord saw the wickedness of humankind had begun great on the earth. Every inclination of their hearts and minds was only evil all the time. This is no longer the world God created, but the world that those other beings made on top of it. And it gets worse. As we continue on in the Book of Enoch, Amizarach taught all those who cast spells and cut roots, and Amros the release of spells. Thanks to these 2, the world now has witchcraft. Yes, witchcraft is real, and you can think of it like using cheat codes in a video game, but not the player, but the non-player characters or NPCs using the cheat codes. That would generate utter chaos and could destabilize any system, including our real world. So we continue on with this. And Barakael, astrologers, and Kokabel, portents, and Tamael taught astrology, and Ezradel taught the path of the moon. So this is various kinds of divination, which is forbidden by God. That's trying to use supernatural means to gain information. I'm sure one of these beings probably pulled out a set of tarot cards or a pendulum or something. And the destruction of men, they cried out, and their voices reached up to heaven. And then Michael, Gabriel, Suriel, and Uriel looked down from heaven and saw the mass of blood that was being shed on the earth, and the iniquity that had been done on the earth. And they said to one another, "Let the devastated earth cry out with the sound of their cries, up to the gate of heaven. And now you, O holy ones of heaven, the souls of men complaining, saying, bring our complaint before the Most High." If you've seen my video on spiritual beings, you know about the divine council and how various angels have their different purposes. Continuing on. And they said to the Lord, the King, Lord of gods, God of gods, King of kings, your glorious throne endures for all generations of the world, blessed and praised. You have made everything, and power over everything is yours, and everything is uncovered and open in front of you, and you see everything, and there is nothing that can be hidden from you. This is true. God has authority over everything, and you cannot hide from God. See then what Azazel has done. He has taught all the iniquity on the earth, and revealed the eternal secrets that are made in heaven. And Semyaza has made known the spells, he to whom you gave authority to rule over those who are with him. This is roughly equal to Adam and Eve eating from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That was forbidden knowledge. You could almost say the story in the heavens paralleled the stories on earth. And they went into the daughters of men together, and they lie with those women, became unclean, and revealed to them their sins. The women bore giants, and thereby the whole earth has been filled with blood and iniquity. And behold, the souls which died, cried out to complain unto the gate of heaven, and to lament has ascended. And they cannot go out into the face of iniquity, which is being continued to be committed on the earth. So that's unacceptable. So many levels of wrong. And by the way, according to other stories from other cultures around this time, most of those women died during childbirth, presumably due to the large size of these giants. Those stories are a little more graphic. And you know everything before it happens, and you know this, and what concerns each of them. But you say nothing to us. What ought we do with them about this? And then the Most High, the Great and Holy One, spoke and sent Arishilar, the son of Lamech, and said to them, say to him in my name, hide yourself, and reveal him the end, which is coming, because the whole earth will be destroyed. A deluge is about to come onto the earth, and all that is in it will be destroyed. This is reflected in Genesis 6:17, which says the following: I am about to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy from under the sky all living creatures that have the breath of life in them, and everything on the earth will die. Enoch continues with the angel saying, now teach him that he may escape and his offspring may survive for the whole earth. Yeah, so him, that's Noah. And the Standard Bible tells you that much. But then Enoch continues saying, and further the Lord said to Raphael, bind Azazel by his hands and feet, and throw him in the darkness, and split open the desert which is in Dudabel, and throw him in there. And throw him on the jagged and sharp stones, and cover him with darkness, and let him stay there forever. And cover his face so that he may not see the light, and so that on the great day of judgment he may be hurled into the fire, and restored on the earth the angels which have reigned. And announce the restoration of the earth. For I shall restore the earth, so that not all the sons of men shall be destroyed with the knowledge which the watchers have made known throughout and taught to their sons. And the whole earth has been ruined by the teachings and the works of Azazel, and against him were written all sin. So an interesting fact about this Azazel character, he is the real entity that was worshipped by the Greeks as Zeus. Think back to the account of Pandora's box and the whole creation of civilization thing. He is also the being that many people mistakenly think of as actually being named Satan. Him and Semyaza. It's actually a number of beings here. And this was also likely spoken of as the serpent in the Garden of Eden, which is surprisingly similar to the Pandora's box story in general ideas. Keep in mind, a serpent was a seraphim, which was a six-winged flying serpent-like creature. And the Lord said to Gabriel, "Proceed against the bastards, the reprobates, and against all the sons of the fornicators, and destroy the sons of the fornicators and the sons of the watchers from among them, and send out to them, and send out against one another, and let them destroy themselves in battle. For they will not have length of days, and they will petition you, but the petitioners will gain nothing in respect of them. For they hope for eternal life, and each of them will live 500 years. So the Watchers, this title is actually a translation of the word Aryan, which means awake. It's Iyrin, which actually means awake one or watcher, in a situational sense. The modern word would actually be more in line with the slang term woke, which is ironically a corruption of the mind, which actually fits here because these angels being woke and trying to think for themselves instead of obeying God. An interesting fact here is that from the time that God warned Noah to the time the flood destroyed the world was around 120 years. These watchers would live 500 years. They were still alive and well after the flood. And the Tower of Babel and the seeds of modern society are evidence of this. Another interesting fact is the word that Aryan is phonetically similar to another supposed race of more than human being that an infamously evil group tried to gain knowledge from. That's not what this video is about. I might make a video on this sometime, but basically a human political government did some very evil things and had some occult leanings where they tried to gain knowledge from spiritual beings outside our realm. They were also crazy. I'm not even going to mention the name of this group here because that would probably get the video taken down. But they won't be mentioned here for various reasons. So, continuing on, the Lord said to Michael, "Go inform Semyaza and the others with him who have associated with the women and corrupted themselves with them in all their uncleanness. And when all their sons kill each other, and when you see the destruction of their loved ones, bind them for 70 generations under the hills of the earth, and until the day of the judgment and their consummation, until the judgment for which for all eternity is accomplished. Keep in mind, these Nephilim, or the offspring of the Watchers, were insane and would literally eat humans and each other. I guess the best picture you can have here is a zombie movie where zombies are attacking people and each other, except these zombies are more than 800 centimeters tall. That would be terrifying. So in those days, they will lead them to the abyss of fire, in torment, and in prison they will be shut up for all of eternity. So let's think back to Revelation 20, verse 10. If you have not read it or don't understand the book of Revelation, I've got a great series on it already for you to watch. So in Revelation 20:10 we see, "And the devil who deceived them was thrown into the lake of fire and sulfur, where the beast and the false prophet are too. And they will be tormented there day and night forever and ever." Continuing on in Enoch, we see, and then Samyaza will be burnt, and from then on destroyed with them. Together they will be bound until the end of generations, and destroyed all the souls of lust, and the sons of the watchers, for they have wronged man. They have destroyed all the wrong from the face of the earth, and every evil work will cease. And now the righteous will be humble, and will live until they beget thousands. In the days of their youth, the Sabbath will fulfill in peace. In those days, on the whole earth will be tilled in righteousness, will be planted with trees, and filled with blessing. This kind of reminds me of the millennial reign of Christ, although there's no direct alluding to it in this text. But it also reminds me of the book of Isaiah, chapter 61, verse 3. To strengthen those who mourn in Zion, by giving them a turban instead of ashes, oil symbolizing joy instead of mourning, a garment symbolizing praise instead of discouragement, and they will be called oaks of righteousness, trees planted by the Lord to reveal his splendor. So these trees being planted are God's people. It's his word is growing. Continuing on in Enoch, and all the pleasant trees that will plant on it, and they will plant on it vines, and the vine that is planted will produce fruit in abundance, and every seed that is sown there, each measure will produce 1,000, and each measure of olives will produce 10 baths of oil. And you will cleanse the earth from all the wrong, and from all the iniquity, and from all the sin, and from all the impiety, and from all the uncleanness which is brought about the earth. And all the sons of men will be in righteousness, and all nations shall serve and bless me, and shall worship me. Or as it's written in Psalm 72, verse 11, all kings will bow down to him, all nations will serve him. Finishing up Enoch chapter 10, we read, and the earth will be cleansed from all the corruption, and from all sin, and from all wrath, and from all torment, and I will not again send flood upon it, for all generations forever. This, of course, is reflected in Revelation 21:4. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death will not exist anymore. Mourning or crying or pain or the former things will cease to exist. It's also kind of related to earlier in Genesis when God promises to never flood the earth again. And that's it for the Book of Enoch chapter 10. So far we have seen it does not end well for those who reject God, but for those who serve him, they will have peace. In the next part, you'll get to see what happens when the fallen angels ask for forgiveness, and where demons come from. And no, they're not the same thing. You will also get to see what the earth looks like from a 4-dimensional perspective a few videos down the road. But for now, you're about 10% of the way through the Book of Enoch. I hope you're enjoying it. Make sure you like and subscribe to keep learning more, and to be notified when these videos release. That's it.